Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production, now available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne.com, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned in to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That handsome guy over there, Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
Well, listen, we keep getting inundated. We covered this yesterday on the news. If you didn't tune into it, yes, folks, we are aware of the passing of legendary actor Kirk Douglas. You don't have to send us any more messages. You don't have to send us any more Facebook messages. We've addressed it on social media. We're aware the legend has finally passed. It's been a long time, but it's been a big part of our show for many years, and we're sad, of course, to hear of the passing of Kirk Douglas. The legend of Kirk Douglas has finally come to an end. Interesting, nonetheless, how many people are still reaching out to me telling me they also remember his passing in the 80s. But here we are, 2020.
Yeah.
And it has finally occurred. Listen, folks, something exciting going on. We've been promising you this. Big news. The show is making a change. Well, what kind of change, Dave? Well, what, are you going to go to 1 day a week? Oh, my God, you guys are so unreliable. We're never going to be able to get this show if you're only going to 1 day a week. Whoa, simmer down, people. For God's sakes, nobody said we're going to 1 day a week. We're staying Saturdays and Sundays, or Mondays and Thursdays. Could be Wednesdays and Tuesdays. I'm not sure, but you're definitely going to get your 2 days a week, plus True Crime Tuesday every week. So don't get nervous. For right now, we will make all of these episodes available on YouTube. So you'll be able to hear all of the episodes we're recording in February available on YouTube and possibly other sources. So just keep your eyes peeled. But definitely right here on our YouTube channel, check it out. And what I need you to do is not only check it out, like this and hit the little bell. That way you subscribe and never miss a minute, or any of the other cool items that we put up here on our YouTube page. So please make sure to do that right now. Like this post, like this show, and then hit that little bell so that you're alerted whenever a new episode or any new content is added to the program. Let us begin. Tim, it's always good to revisit with a friend, and today Joni Mayhan is back with us. Mm-hmm. And Joni reached out to me a few weeks ago and said, Dave, I've got a story for you. This is a terrifying, true haunting. And we always love when Joni visits us. Joni, welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Yeah, and you're at it again. You've got another book that's coming out, and this is coming out, what is it, February 20th, correct?
Correct.
Excellent. February 20th, it will be out and available. We have a link to their Facebook page on today's program so that you can find it and easily access it. And this is pretty creepy. The Hanover Haunting, the DeAnna Simpson Story. Why don't you, and I guess from what I understand, our good friend John Zaffis, the godfather of the paranormal, actually wrote the foreword for this book. Is that right?
He did. We were very blessed to have John involved in this project. He's also involved in a chapter inside the book. It goes through a pretty terrifying investigation that they did there with DeAnna. So you get to hear a little bit more about what the Godfather had up his sleeve.
Excellent. So the book will be out February 20th. Joni is the author of the book. It will be out. Again, we've got links so you can follow along with this. But we also heard from DeAnna Simpson herself, who's going to join us in just a few moments and tell us this tale. Joni, you're always out there keeping your ear to the ground, pulse, finger on the pulse of the supernatural society. maybe you could at least introduce us this way. How did you first become aware of the Hanover Haunting?
You know, the Hanover Haunting was hard to not know about because it was all over the news several years ago after a Fox News team came in and filmed the house. And they had an experience there where the cameraman was actually scratched, and then they caught the image of a dark shadow while they were there filming. So, and then after that, the house was on the Dead Files. So that brought it some really national attention. So I was aware of it. I'd watched all those shows and I was aware of it, but never thought that I would be closely involved in the story until about a year ago. DeAnna reached out to me and said, I'm looking to write a book about my experiences, and you were recommended by our mutual friend Gina, and would you be interested? And so I did a little more research, just looking back at it. And it's, if you Google Hanover Haunting or the most haunted house in Hanover, you'll find just link after link after link of information and pictures and just a crazy, extreme haunting, unlike anything I've ever seen before. So
that's what I was going to ask you.
On board the minute.
Yeah, you've written a lot and have experienced a lot regarding the paranormal. How would you rate this haunting compared to others that you've heard about, investigated, and seen?
Oh, hands down, this is the most extreme haunting I've ever heard about, and I've been involved in quite a few. It was the things that she went through, the things she endured, and even has proof of, and other people's stories about experiencing similar things. It's crazy. I've never seen anything like this.
When you start hearing claims that it's not just the homeowner, which, listen, we all get those email messages, the Facebook private messages, right, of, oh, I think my house is haunted. This is going on, that's going on, I'm seeing this, I'm hearing that. We all take it with a grain of salt until we get more information. But when you start seeing, Joni, that this case is so well covered that even the media who is covering it is being affected, was that a clinch for you on knowing you've got to dig deeper?
Oh, definitely. And really, it all came home for me when I actually visited the house. So I had attended the Mass Paracon in Massachusetts, and I was back on my way back home to Indiana, where I live now. And I made a point to stop and visit with DeAnna. And I thought, I need to see this house. I need to see what it feels like. And I'm also sensitive, so I can feel things when I walk into locations, and I can tell how severe it is. There's been a lot of cases where I've gone in and just turned around because the haunting there is well above my pay grade, and it's something that I don't want to have to contend with. And that was what was going on at DeAnna's house. I walked inside, and the ghosts were just all over me in an instant. It was such an oppressive feeling. It was like walking into an invisible wall of smoke and oil. It was just so intense. And I just looked at her and I said, how do you live in this? And she said, what choice do I have? This is where we have to live. And so I kept having to go back outside. I said, can we go sit on the porch? And it was nice weather, so we were able to sit outside. And it was at that moment that I said, you know what, DeAnna, I'll write your book, but that's secondary. We got to get you help and get you out of this situation. So, and that's pretty much what we worked on.
Joni, how do you, even the best sensitives, if they know too much before arriving at a location, their mind can affect them. How do you separate what you knew about this haunting going in, what was happening? How do you separate that from your actual sensitivities so that you know that you're not just picking, you read something creepy and then you go in the house and you get that vibe just because you're like, God, I'm right here, I'm in it. Is it hard ever for you to kind of separate the difference?
Yeah, as a medium, I like to always go in with a clean slate and not know any information, so that way all my interpretations are pure and they are my own and not tainted by other people's experiences. But I'm also clairaudient, so when I go into a haunted location or I'm anywhere near a ghost, I hear them. And for me, it's similar to ear ringing, except for the difference that it's not a constant sound. I can turn my head, and the sound either gets louder or softer, so I know where the ghost is in the house. And over the years, I've learned.
So wait, you hear
really
like you hear it as though it's kind of a disturbance or a ringing, not like you're not like you're hearing voices.
No, I'm hearing like a shuffle of air in some cases, and sometimes it's more of a high pitch, and I'm able to tune into that. That's my gateway. So when I tune into that sound, I'm able to get more information. I'll get mind pictures, or I'll get just information that I know. And sometimes when they're really, really strong, the sound is really loud. And then it also comes with that just absolute terrifying feeling of this thing wants to get you. This thing wants you dead. And I've not felt that a whole lot of times, but when I have, I've definitely retreated because it's nothing that I can work with myself. So I felt that at her house when I walked in.
Right. There was just that sense you knew what you were up against. Could you hear any of the spirits at all? Were they warning? Was it as if they didn't know you were there, but you could hear them? Talk us through a little bit of that experience.
Well, when I walked in, it was immediately as though there were a dozen of them that jumped me. It was so overwhelming. It was hard to pick one out and get information. It was like being in a rock concert surrounded by frantic people. And I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't pick out one to get information from. It was just very overwhelming. So I would go outside and then I'd say, okay, I think I can go back in again. And we'd walk around and she would show me different areas of the house. And it was, for a minute, things would back off. And then all of a sudden, everything was all over me again. It was just so overwhelming as a sensitive to go into something like that. It was more than I've ever felt in one place at one time. And I've been to some really creepy asylums, old jails and prisons and, really haunted houses as an investigator, and have never felt that way before. Probably the closest I've ever felt was when we were at Waverly Hills recently, and we did an overnight investigation, and we were coming upon where the creeper was. And that sensation was very similar to what I felt when I was in DeAnna's house.
All right, let's take a moment now to introduce DeAnna Simpson. DeAnna, the woman at the center of the supernatural nightmare. DeAnna, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Wow, just in what Joni has explained and how intense she picked up on this in a brief moment, knowing she could leave, she could go outside to talk to you about this. Everybody's going to need to know, how does someone survive this kind of high energy, high octane kind of experience? So we'll get to that in a bit, but how soon did you realize things were off in this house? Or had you been there for a while and then they keyed up? Walk us through the start of this haunting for you.
The start is that when my husband and we got married, we were living in an apartment. We started actively looking for a home. A neighbor tipped off Tom about this house that would be perfect for us. So we made an appointment. There was a family that was flipping the house. We said that we would come out. So let's just say it was a Tuesday when we showed up. As soon as we pulled up, it reminded me of a home that I grew up in Kentucky with my mom and dad and my brother. So I was instantly drawn to this house. So when we were still sitting in the car, Tom looked at me and was like, no, we're going to go look at this house. And we're just doing it because, I promised so-and-so at work we'd look at it. And no, this is not what I want. I can just tell by looking at it. And I said, I love this house. I can't believe it. I mean, I was out of the car door. I was in the house. And mind you, it's a cute house. It's small. It's adorable. But it was nothing special. And I absolutely was mesmerized by it. It's like to the point where when I walked in the house, I had similar smells had certain sights that I was like, oh my gosh, Tom, look at this. This was in my mom and dad's kitchen. This was the same flooring. Like, I was just overwhelmed with wanting this house.
Had you ever had any kind of sense of connection to anything like this before in your life?
No. Like, let's just say, for example, I do feel like that everybody has a sixth sense. For example, let's say you're sitting in the family room, you hear the phone ring, and it rings. You know, that kind of thing. But, you know, like, I could be sensitive to that, but I mean, I'm not a medium. I thought that, like, I was that person that went to Gettysburg, loved a ghost tour, went and saw The Exorcist and Halloween movies, like, you know, like everybody else did. That was basically the extent of my impression on things. Was I sensitive? Yes, but not like this. Not like I could see that this house was bad. Don't do it. But we had a lot of signs not to get this house. Yet
you kept feeling drawn to it as though this house belonged to you and you kind of belonged to it. Immediately.
It felt like when we got done seeing the house, I didn't even wait for the guy to give me the tour. I just started running through the house. I just went off on my own when Tom thanked him very much, and then we got in the car, and Tom was like, "What happened to you?" I said, "Tom, you got to place a bid. This is it." And he was like, No, we're going to keep looking. And you're right, David, I was so drawn to it that every night that I got off from work, I went back to the house.
How did he react to your reactions to this? Was he unnerved by the way you were acting?
Yes.
And
because
was he feeling any kind of? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He was like, he says, put your poker face on, calm down, don't be so excited about it. We're not getting this house. And then I did just the opposite of what he told me to do. I couldn't contain myself.
But yet he's feeling this isn't for him. Has he ever given you any indication as to why, or it wasn't resonating with him at all?
Well, it wasn't resonating with him at all, period. But he would just be like, for Tom, there's certain things that you look for that would make you want to put a bid on a house.
Right.
And he was like, it's too small. I don't want to live in town. It's a one-car garage. He was like, DeAnna, I've never lived in town. I want to live out. We're just doing this, to tell Shirley we saw the house. And he's like, no, I'm just being nice. And I mean, every obstacle came up, like I said, why we couldn't get this house. We had just both went through a divorce. We knew that we wanted to share our life together. We knew in the future we wanted to get married, and we wanted a home to start our family. And every home that Tom and I had looked at prior to Maple Avenue, I was like, nope. And he was like, yes. I was like, nope, yes, nope. Until I saw this.
Let me ask Joni, if you don't mind, Joni, having the vast experience you've had, why do you think, if there is such an intense and dark haunting there, that it would feel so inviting to DeAnna as opposed to repelling her or giving her that? I mean, we've all been in places that you just walk in and you're like, no, I'm out of here. I don't know what it is, but I want to be out of this place. This was the complete opposite.
Well, as John Zappa said to us during his foreword, it was definitely a perfect storm. The land was absolutely saturated with negative energy. The house was filled with ghosts, and they wanted DeAnna. They saw her immediately as someone they could control, someone they could monopolize. She came to them very vulnerable. She had some bad experiences prior to Tom. She was an abused woman. They saw her as somebody they could mold and control. And I think they probably also saw the fact that she was a sensitive, but she hadn't really tapped into her abilities yet. So she was the perfect person for them to be in this house. And, mind you, several other people had made offers on the house, and all the deals fell through. So the ghosts were definitely pulling the strings. They wanted DeAnna.
Hearing that now, DeAnna, how does that make you feel in hindsight? Is it disturbing? Is it comforting to know that the spirit realm wanted you there? What exactly do you feel at this point?
At this point, ever since we fled the home and bought another home, it just made me feel vulnerable, hopeless.
Can I stop you for a second there? Did Joni, were you just laughing?
No.
Tim, did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Holy.
I heard it.
Right. I thought, because as Joni or as DeAnna started, there is a distinct sound. I thought it was Joni. It sounded like
a woman
coming over. Yeah. Right. A woman's voice laughing.
Oh, my goodness. No, I didn't hear it.
Oh, I've got the willies. That's crazy. That's crazy. Goosebumps. Yeah. All right. So I'm sorry. I was totally thrown off of the game there from your answer. So let me go back to that. How do you feel now knowing that they saw you, they marked you, and they knew they had to have you?
I guess the word would be that I'm indebted to Tom. I owe him a world of an apology. I felt I was totally a victim. Did you hear that?
I did. I couldn't hear what it said. Tim, are you hearing that in between, the kind of cutting in and out?
No, I'm not.
We'll have to play it back on recording because, and I'm sure listeners, keep your ears tuned during this interview. It sounds like a voice is trying to come through as DeAnna's talking. Go ahead, DeAnna.
Imagine, you're starting over with your new life. You're in love. I have 3 children. My husband has 3 children. We want to mold our families together. We just want a family. And then I moved, I begged Tom. We're arguing about the house. I'm like, please, you have to buy me this house. So I took on full responsibility and ownership of this home that my husband didn't, want me for us to get. Matter of fact, we had just been through divorces. We didn't even have the money. I called my father. We didn't even have the 25% down to put on this house. I mean,
were you aware of how obsessed you were at the time?
No. And when I look back now, I was out of control. I was completely out of control. When Tom was like, well, there you go. I'm sorry. I can't get you this house. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, because we've just both been through a divorce. We're just financially in the hole from it. We have to recoup. We're just going to have to rent. And I was like, like, nope. So I call my father. I send him pictures of the house. And I said, Dad, this home looks like when we lived in Struble in Kentucky. And he says, okay, I tell you what. You're starting your new life. I'm gonna gift you the $30,000. You can put down on the house. And when I came to Tom, I said, now what? I had no idea how obsessed I was. I got to the point where I just begged Tom. I said, I promise you, we won't make this our forever home if you don't want to. Let's just get in it. You'll feel differently. I promise you. You'll love it. Just give me a chance. And he was just like, all right, like, okay, honey, if it means that much. Well, I feel horrible. I mean, this house really put a lot on us. Like, you think you're starting off your life. And it just started the nightmare.
All right. You get the house. How soon after purchasing this house, and did you start to, well, let me reel it back for a second, because you said something interesting a bit ago, and I'm sorry I got kind of derailed by the weird voices and noises coming through, but you said that there were signs that you shouldn't have taken this house. Can you walk us through that? What were some of these signs?
One of the examples is whenever you walk through a home, I looked at the man who had bought the home to flip it. And I said, do you mind if I take pictures? Because I want to send these pictures home to my mom and dad and show them what we're looking at. And he's like, sure, take all these pictures. So I took all of these pictures. Tom and I went back to the apartment. We went back to have this discussion about this home that was not a discussion. It was actually me begging him for the house. We started looking through the pictures. And as I was looking through the pictures, I noticed, now, please excuse me for my terminology, because I'm not in a paranormal group. I don't know this aspect of the world. Well, I started seeing these big white, like one big white ball, or I would look like something like an arrow coming out of the ceiling and shooting across the room. Something that looked like smoke. I saw this one black shadow in the kitchen. And I said, Tom, we saw the house during the day. What is this? And he said, honey, oh my gosh, it's light reflection. It's hardwood floors. It's called dust. It's called a car going by and the reflection coming in the window. And I went, yeah, that's it. Sure, that's it. And then as we left the house, and I opened up, there's the kitchen, and then you walk through into the breezeway. And when I shut the door and we locked it, I started taking pictures in the breezeway. And, I was getting the same thing. But Tom assured me, he's a pharmacist, he looks at everything very scientifically. He's like, that's what it is. He would always have a good explanation for me to understand. And those were the first signs that we saw, that I didn't realize that it was a warning. I didn't understand it.
Now, you're in this house.
Yes.
What are the first few examples of supernatural activity that began to manifest?
Well, the very first thing that happened is that as soon as I moved into the house, I shut the kitchen door that led into the breezeway.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was taking the picture, I was so excited to show my mom and dad, and I was taking a picture of myself with the key in my hand. And when I looked at the picture, there was a man's, like a see-through, apparent man's face with transparent, like, neck and shoulders looking from inside the kitchen, looking at me in the breezeway. It started as soon as I got the keys in my hands.
Well, wait, so you take this photograph and you capture a full human apparition.
In the window. What was that?
I don't know. I heard something talking over your voice as well. DeAnna is talking, folks, and from time to time we're hearing this voice. Now, we do have Joni Mayhan on the line as well. Joni, are you hearing those extra voices?
I'm not, which is a little odd. It makes me wonder if maybe it's coming from my end, which is all possible.
It's strange because Tim's not hearing it. You're not hearing it, but both DeAnna and I are hearing, while she's talking, a female voice come over. Very strange. Okay. she's obviously, Joni, picking up on what's going on there. She starts seeing these manifestations. They wanted her to have this house. Why immediately begin to make themselves known to her, though? You would think if they're trying to lull her into a sense of security, it wouldn't begin with such a radical and powerful first statements.
Oh, I think the minute they got her in that house, they knew they had her. They had control over her because they were pulling the strings from that point forward, not allowing her to leave, not allowing her to make the decision to get out of the house. So I think they were delighted. They finally got what they wanted, and they started in on her immediately. I mean, in most cases, a haunting starts really softly and slowly. You might hear something that you can't explain. You might see something out of the corner of your eye. And in her case, it really just started immediately. It didn't, they just jumped in and took the reins.
Okay, DeAnna, you've got this first apparition caught on film. Are you hearing anything in the house?
After we moved into the house, and like I said, Tom's a pharmacist, so he works a lot of long hours, leaves early in the morning, doesn't get off until, 9 o'clock in the evening. It's not unusual for him to do a 12-hour day. So what had happened is once we moved into the house and got everything moved in, the whole atmosphere from that, me being ecstatic to like out of control, like my dream home, just instantly felt like I wasn't sure if I did the right thing. I started to question myself about getting this house, if it was the right thing to do. Did I do the right thing?
Right.
I started to, as I was unpacking, as the day went on, I always had that sense that somebody was walking up behind me. When you get that feeling that you know somebody else is in the room,
mm-hmm.
It started like that. It started kind of subtle, like you would do something and you had that feeling that would make you just shiver, like right up your back. And you would turn around and be like, whew, that's weird. And then I would just logically say, well, it's something new. I've had a lot of new changes in my life. Mm-hmm. Got divorced, started a new job. Now it's a new house.
So you're just deconstructing it, trying to make yourself more comfortable.
Sure. I'm trying to logically try to explain to me why I'm anxious.
Well, folks, this is the start of something much darker, a nightmare of epic proportions. We'll dig deeper into the story. Stay with us. You're listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio.
As the NFL season wraps up, you're going to want to check out the Dan Patrick Show for everything coming up. Dan and the Danettes provide the most up-to-date sports coverage every day of the week. Plus, Dan's got the biggest guests, the best commentary, and everything in between with a bit of fun on the side. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Podcast One, Apple Podcasts, and many other podcast apps so you can get new episodes every day.
This message brought to you by FEMA. Home fires occur most often in winter. Keep anything that can catch fire at least 3 feet from heating equipment. And never use an oven to heat your home. Stay in the kitchen when frying, grilling, or broiling food. Turn space heaters off when you leave the room or go to bed. Make sure all vents are clear of snow and ice to allow carbon monoxide to vent outside. Have your furnace, heating system, and chimneys serviced each year by a qualified professional. Learn more at www.usfa.fema.gov.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. Be the someone who gives their time. Be the someone who lends an ear. Be the someone who takes a step. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN, asking you to join the fight against sexual violence and volunteer in your community. Log on to RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org, to learn how you can be the someone.
This message brought to you by the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network and this station.
We're back. This is Darkness Radio, your home for the best in paranormal talk radio. Remember, folks, Follow us over at darknessradio.com for updates as we continue to go on. DeAnna Simpson, Joni Mayhan, our guests, The Hanover Haunting. That's the name of the book. It's coming out February 20th. We've been hearing some of the beginnings, the stirrings of this. And as Joni told you, she's never had an experience or seen this strong of a haunting before. John Zaffis weighed in on this. Now, when you reached out to John, Joni, to discuss this, even though you'd been there, you'd heard parts of her story, you were there for yourself. Were you surprised by John Zaffis and his feel towards this property as well?
Yes, I was, because, as you know, John has a 46-year career. He's been all over the world investigating the paranormal. And for him to say this is an extreme haunting, and his advice to DeAnna during the time was, you need to get out. This place isn't safe. It will kill you. Then you know that it is an extreme haunting if it makes John Zaffis say something like that.
Good God, it will kill you. Now, how long into your experiences there before you started reaching out for help, DeAnna?
I started talking about it to the girls at work. So I was probably only there for about 6 months, if that. When I started telling people at work if they believed in ghosts, I tried to get a feel for the girls. It was uncomfortable for me to talk about, number one, because I didn't know how starting a new job and how these girls would react to me.
Right.
And, it's bad enough of what was happening in the home, but I didn't want people at work thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on with her? Then this one girl tipped me off at work, and she told me about a group that she recommended, and I called them. So it was probably within 6 months that I had somebody in there. And even at that point, it was uncomfortable as I had to address this to Tom, because a lot of things had happened which led up to the 6 months what made me make this decision to contact somebody. And Tom made it clear, I want no part of this. I'm going to go out with my brother, get some barbecue chicken wings and have some few beers, and I'm out of here. I don't want any part of this.
Has he had any experiences up to that point in the house? Or has he, but he's dismissing them as trying to make logic of the situation?
The first 6 months, Tom at that point had not had any experiences. He was hearing me express my concern of the stories that I would tell him when he came home. And he just looked at me like, well, what are you saying? Well, what are you trying to tell me, D? And I was like, Tom, I think the house is haunted. And then he just kind of looked at me and he just said, well, D, you wanted this house. You had to have it. And now we're here. And he said, that's just how it is. Because see what had happened, David, after we bought the house in 2007, the market took a crash. So we paid $218 for it.
Right.
And then the market took a dive. And at that point, I had not asked Tom if we could move yet, because I knew at that point I would have really been pushing him to the extreme.
Were you noticing a personality change in your husband? Not just irritation because you had to have this house and now you think it's haunted, but was there any other aspects of your husband's style and personality that began to shift at all?
Yes.
How was he becoming?
Well, Tom's really a jokester. When he walks into the room, he's the life of the party. Tom is very well known. He's been a pharmacist for 40 years. He's got a lot of friends. We really socialized a lot. We were going out. We were going here and there. To all of a sudden, Tom started feeling really tired. as we would be talking, he would, walk in the door, and it was no longer starting to get those hugs and those kisses, and he was starting to become agitated. He started to become a little bit more snappy, and I'd be like, "Hey, what's the matter? Why are you snapping?"
Right.
And then he would get himself in check, and he'd be like, he'd come up to me and give me a hug, and he'd just be like, "Oh, I don't know, Dee, it's just got to be work." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's something you've done for 40 years, or is there anything?" No, it's just fine. Let's just not talk about it. Let's just watch a movie. Come on. So, yeah.
So he's trying to make the best of the situation, but it was wearing him out.
Yes. And what I didn't know at the time, he was taking on all my burden because I'm expressing to him about all the new happenings and things that were happening to me.
Right.
And then plus he was feeling oppressed just because of the house, and it was just too much. It was just the beginning of what was yet to come.
All right, so you've got these slow steps. It's beginning to physically and emotionally wear down you and your husband. You're capturing in photographs this image. Now, what did your husband make of the image of the man in the door? Or were you reluctant to show him that, or did you eventually let him see?
Initially, I let him see. Initially, he always was really quick to have an answer. Then it got to the point where he would just be like, "I don't know, Dee. What do you want me to say? I can't explain this. I have no idea, okay?" And then he started getting snappy, which was not Tom. And then it got to the point where I just took this all on myself. Like, for example, I told Joni, we bought the home in February. We had an Indian summer day. So I took my rake, I went out into my yard. I started raking the yard, and then all of a sudden, now we live on a corner lot. It's pretty large, Maple and Monroe. And out of nowhere, I'm raking this elderly woman, and she just had a really shaky, low voice. And she was like, in her witchy old lady voice, she says, "Excuse me." And I look up, and out of nowhere, here is this elderly woman, all hunched back over. She's got a 3-legged dog that appeared to be as old as her. And then she's like, "Oh, good day, darling." And I looked at her, and I was like, "Ooh, like, where did she come from?" And she says, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm fine." She's like, "Well, good luck to you, dear." And I went, "Good luck to me?" And I had my gloves on, my garden rake, and she says, "Yeah, did you know there was a boy that was murdered in the basement?" And I went, whoa, wait, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me. I rip off my gloves, and then as I'm taking off my gloves to go put down the rake, she's like, "Good luck, you're going to need it." I looked up, she was gone.
No.
She was completely gone.
All right. Now, Joni, you hear a claim like this, and there's a boy murdered in the basement. Were you able to uncover any proof of this scenario?
Some, but as DeAnna found out, some of the relatives still lived in town that were related to the previous owners, and she was able to get some information about the story and confirm that it happened, but people did not want to talk about it. She was actually to a point threatened not to dig any further into that story because there was a lot of cover-up. There were a lot of secrets. This happened back in like the 50s or 60s, and people didn't want to talk about it. So it was hard to get information on her end.
Wait a minute, DeAnna, they were essentially threatening you for trying to push further and get more information on this case?
Yes, what had happened is, yes, I went to, let's just say without saying names, I went to the local library. I went into this special room that has all these documents of everything in Hanover. I went to go ask this woman who was a volunteer in this section, in this historical section of the library. And I gave her my address, and I explained to her that I was told by locals that there was a child spawned off through an affair through one of the owners. He had Down syndrome. He was living with the father, and the uncle was molesting this poor boy. So, we were also told that boy would pick up your local kitty cat, that if your little kitty cat came into the yard, he would pick it up and throw it alive in the burn barrel.
Oh.
So, the same day that the boy, coincidentally, they said, mishandled a firearm due to his disability, the uncle went to New Oxford and blew his head off at his sister's house.
So the boy dies. Then the kid that may have, or then the man that may have been molesting this kid ends up taking his own life as well.
Yes. So to get back to the library, I was told the volunteer of this whole story I was hearing from locals. And then she says, come back in a week and I'll have all your answers for you, because I grew up here. And then when I came back a week later, she was waiting for me at the Historical Society, and she told me she was not going to help me. And if I knew what was good for me, I would leave this alone. And she says, you don't know what you're getting into. Drop it.
And was she as venomous as that when she was talking to you? I mean, the way you're portraying it, it was very, almost sinister.
She walked off. She just walked off. And I just said, okay, this is not my hometown. I'm an outsider coming in. I want no trouble. I'm already having enough trouble with my home, the haunting, establishing a comfortable relationship, trying not to rock the boat with Tom and everything that was happening to us in our life. I just went, okay. But I did go back to the Historical Society, and I tried my best to look up every and any information that I could. But it's hard to find the boy, because it was spawned off from an affair, is what the story goes, to a mistress. So the child had her name. So I started going to doorbell, ringing the doorbell. I didn't care. I needed to know. I was very aggressive about it. And tried to talk to some people. Some people they looked at me like, you're a Fruit Loop. You're a freak. Like, I don't know anything. All right, thank you, bye. Boom, shut the door.
How did your husband feel about you uncovering these dark secrets about what took place in your house?
It was agitating him even more. He wasn't excited about it at all. When I went to go tell him, he was just like, Dee, what's the point? What are you trying to say? We're stuck. We're here. We're top heavy. Just get, and then he's like, just get the house blessed, okay? What do you got to do? What do you need? What do you need from me? And then I was like,
Was he becoming more and more aggressive about this as well?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. Until he was attacked. And then once he was attacked, it was no longer a question.
Okay, well, take us to that moment when his attack occurred.
What had happened is we were sitting in the kitchen. I just got done feeding them, and we were just sitting there, and we had a nice dinner, and then so forth. And then he just kind of looks at me. We're talking, and then we hear this door slamming. And then he just looks at me condescendingly like, oh, must be the ghost, right? Like he's heard so much stories.
Right.
And then my retort to him was like, Tom, why do you have to be like that? Why do you need to be such a hole? And he's just like, oh, come on, DeAnna. He says, you got to laugh about it. Come on. You know that everything's fine. And then we start getting into an argument because everything is not fine. And then I'm like, look, we start arguing. I'm like, I just need your support, okay? I just need you to believe in me. All I'm asking you to do is this. And then he comes out, and then all of a sudden, we start seeing peripherally this black mist. And it was kind of like a serpent. It was just very quick. And then when we just both stopped in our tracks, no more fighting, no more nothing. It looked like somebody had blown black coal smoke that was in a serpent-type like figure, went through into the breeze doorway, and then he just looked at me, and I was about to jump his bones about like I felt justified. And then I just...
All right, well, maybe you and I have different definitions of jumping your bones. I don't know if you were so emotionally excited that sex was the first thing on your mind, but I don't know if I'm picking up on something different here than maybe what you were trying to get at. So were you aggressively, you were ready to jump on him because finally you were being validated, or the sexual tension was finally broken?
We'll retract that. Jump the bone. Yeah. We'll retract that, and we're just going to say.
Good. All right. Going to say, Tim, I've been with a lot of women. When they're frightened, jumping my bones doesn't seem to be the first reaction.
Well, with the exception of horror movies, Dave. I mean,
That's right. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, where everybody gets killed.
Right, but after something scary happens, they have sex. It's always a weird deal. But all right, so he finally witnesses this for himself.
He finally witnesses this, and then I looked at him and I just said, "So what are you going to say about that? Huh? What can you scientifically prove about that?" And then he just said, "D," and then all of a sudden, his left arm, he grabs it, and he goes, "Ow!" And then he grabs his arm. He's got a long sleeve shirt on it. He unbuttons it, and we both jump up, and he's like, I'm like, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And he's rolling. He goes, I don't know. It's burning. He rolls up his arm sleeve, and he's got a gash and a X, not 3 long marks, but an X. And it was to the point where it was so deep, surface-wise, that the X it raised and it started to bleed, like as if you had just wiped out your knee when you fall off your bike. It just like took that top layer of skin. And it was a big X.
And now your husband is a believer.
Yes, because he just looked at me and he hugged me real tight. And he just said, "Oh, Dee, I'm so sorry." And I just started, I just fell into him and I just started sobbing because it was the moment that he realized, that
had to feel good, though. Now you're not alone in this. You are confirmed in the strange behavior that's taking place in your house. He has seen it, unfortunately, with dramatic effect. Now, was that the first more violent thing that had ever happened there?
No, that wasn't the first violent thing that happened there. There was a lot of occurrences that happened to me or happened to my daughter. The first
now,
thing
I know,
happened,
I was going to say, I know you can't give away too much because you do want people to check out the book, but if you could give me one of the most intense examples that happened to you and to your daughter, I'd appreciate that for our listeners' sake.
Oh, sure. When my daughter was there, we went to go downstairs to do some laundry, and as we went downstairs, we just went to go do laundry. So we both walked downstairs, and she said, "Mom, I'm not going to go down that basement by myself. Please come with me." So as we started doing the laundry, and we were just laughing, carrying on, the lights in the basement shut off. And with that, we started to hear when the lights turned off, we just panicked. We just stopped, and Amber's like, "Mom, Mom, Mom." And I'm like, "It's okay. It's okay." And then in the back room of the basement, we heard the storage door slam, and then we started hearing this low, laughter, like it was enjoying our fear. And it was really deep, like that Boris Karloff laughter that you would get that was drawn out, like in Thriller, Right. And then at that time, Amber grabbed me, and it was so pitch black. We couldn't see. We were falling over each other, trying to scramble, and we were both screaming. But once we made it to the steps to go upstairs, we noticed that all the lights were on upstairs in the house. And then we just went upstairs, and as soon as we both reached the top of the steps, then the lights turned on. Now, that wasn't one of the worst, scariest moments. The other really scary moment, now did not happen to my daughter. My husband was upstairs asleep. We have 2 bedrooms on the first floor, and we have a 3rd bedroom upstairs. Now, this one wasn't the worst, but it was very intense. I was sleeping on the first floor because my husband was snoring so bad. Well, as I was sleeping on the first floor, I started hearing all of these toys playing downstairs. Started hearing children's toys. So I get up. It's pitch black. It's in the middle of the night. I go down the steps. And as I'm going down the steps, I have night lights, in the outlets. So we have this storage door, leads to a storage closet. I started hearing all of these toys going off in the back of the closet. With that, I opened up the door, and I looked down, and we had a basket of toys that when the grandchildren, if they were to come over, that's where I kept all their toys. Well, when I opened the door, they were all going off in the basket. So I stepped inside the closet in disbelief. Like I could not believe what I was seeing. So I walked into the closet, and the door slammed right behind me. And when I was in that storage closet and the door slammed, the toys continued to go off. I started screaming and pounding on the door, screaming for my life, because I could not unlock the door. There was a little window at the end of the storage closet, and I could see a very black cape type, like the room started shrinking and enclosing on me. I just started banging and banging and banging and kicking, and this big black saying cape just got closer and closer, and the toys sounded louder and louder. And then finally, I just I just fell down. I just got on my butt, wrapped my arms around my knees, and just started screaming and sobbing and praying to God. I just started praying, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. And I just went into a full-blown panic attack. And right when I gave up, then the door just opened.
Joni, do you think that what DeAnna was dealing with was spiritual, like a ghost, a disenfranchised human soul? Do you believe that it was something demonic, something malevolent, like an elemental? What exactly do you discern from this information and these type of, I mean, it's easy to jump to the demon side of things, but if there was human loss of life there, somebody that had been tortured and treated poorly, and the abuser killed himself immediately as well, it kind of opens up many different doors.
Yeah, and the haunting was so extreme, so diverse. There were so many different ghosts there. You know, as we got into this, talking about the story a little bit more, DeAnna told me the former homeowners were haunting the house as well. She had some experiences with them showing up at the side of her bed. I think that I don't think there was anything demonic, although a lot of people came in, felt that there was something demonic. But there was also something that in that basement that was really attributing to the haunting, and that's a portal. Many people would come in without the knowledge and would feel that. People, sensitive, psychic mediums. As she got into it, she started inviting more and more teams in to try to help her get rid of the haunting or at least learn more about it. They all felt the portal. So everything was coming in. It was like an unlocked door to the spirit realm. And so who knows what came in. Some of them stayed, some of them left. It was becoming a ghost hotel pretty quickly, and they were drawn by that negative energy that's just saturating the land in that area. You know, as DeAnna was doing research, she learned that, there's been a lot of suicides, a lot of murders. The land goes back to, the stories about the land goes back to the 1700s, where there were land disputes and someone was murdered right on her property. It's 16 miles outside of Gettysburg, so a soldier actually died on property near where her front yard is, en route to Gettysburg. Just so many things have happened there over a period of time that it's really absorbed into the area, and so it draws in all the negative energy.
You have certainly got the historical aspects of why this place would be haunted. It's kind of blood-soaked in a sense. You're having all of this activity. What are you doing to keep yourself sane, to feel like you're not losing your mind?
The only thing that I could do that I found myself keeping my composure, I got out of the house as much as I could. When Tom wasn't home and I knew he had a late night, I would go walk. I would go take a drive. I don't have any family here except for my children. And I don't mean just except for my children, but like my immediate family were all from Kentucky. So I would call my kids and just be like, I made excuses like, hey, can I come over? Can I just hang out? There was times where I would pull up and I could just feel the negativity was so thick. And I was just so afraid to enter my own home. I would just go to the mall and sit on a bench, and I wouldn't go back until the mall closed, and I knew Tom would be home soon. And that's really bad when you would get off from work, and your home is supposed to be your castle, but
right, your sanctuary.
Yes. It's your retreat. It's your place. You're right. It's your sanctuary, correct. But we didn't have a home. We owned a house, and it was a house I didn't want to go to. And knowing that my husband worked all those late hours, I tried to get creative in ways, and there was plenty of times I sat in my car in a parking lot because I just could not return. So it was tough.
So your husband, up until that moment of his attack, he just wasn't a believer.
Yes. And then he started to see things.
Once he had that attack, what type of things did he begin seeing?
He started to see things more. Initially, it started off peripherally, like he would think he saw something peripherally, but then we started to see images, like walk across from one bedroom to another. We started, like if we were upstairs sleeping, we started both hearing, Tom started hearing a child crying, and he'd be like, oh, that might be Amber, won't you go check on your daughter? Because my daughter that was 22 came to live with us for a while. So then, so when I went downstairs to go check on Amber, she was sound asleep. And then when she was sound asleep, there was no, since she was sound asleep, I noticed that the cats were digging at the ground. Like my two cats were like trying to cover up, like as if they were in a litter box. And then once I scooched the cats away, there was one bloody footprint with 2 toes. So the footprint was human except for it only had like a hoof-like front, and it had blood. Yes, it had blood around it, and that's what we were hearing. Clopping sounded, clop. 1 foot, clop, clop, clop. And then when Tom came down the next day to see it, he was like, what the hell? So then I got a rag. I didn't clean it until Tom saw it, and it was underneath the polyurethane. I mean, I scrubbed it, and I finally had to get a SOS pad, and I put some soft scrub with bleach, aggressively scratched the floor, cleaning it up, and it kept coming back. Every time we heard the footprint, every time we heard that 1 foot with the clop in the middle hallway, it was always guaranteed to be right back, and droplets of blood. And it smelled like, if you're a hunter, you would know the smell if you had killed an animal, and that's what it permeated. You could smell it.
And yet your daughter's living downstairs.
Yes.
Did you?
She didn't.
Go ahead.
She didn't stay for long. She couldn't take it.
So it was making itself known to her as well, even though she was sleeping that night.
Yes. Yes, it started affecting her too. In the room that she was sleeping in, the closet door kept jiggling and jiggling and jiggling, and then to the point where it would jingle, and then it would open. But then what really finalized with Amber is Tom and I went to Kentucky. We had a spare bedroom where he had his elk head and a deer head, and it was his man cave. It was his office. So we took a bedroom and made it into an office. But we always locked the door because he had guns in there. We just told Amber, hey, you're responsible. You can have people over. I don't care. But you know the golden rule. You don't go in this door, but it's locked anyways. And all of his guns were locked up in safes. So Amber called me from Pennsylvania to Kentucky one night, like 3:00 in the morning, frantic. And she called me screaming, and she said, Mom, I just heard the loudest bang in my life. And she says, and it came from Tom's room. I heard it in his office. Mom, it was so loud, it shook the floor. And She went through the house. I said, Amber, go. Lock the house, go. And she says, no. She says, no, wait a minute. And she started walking through the house. She picked up a kitchen knife, and she started walking through the house. The door was locked. She goes, Mom, somebody might have broke a window or something. And I said, get out of the house. We will come home. We're just going to come home from Kentucky. We're coming home. I said, just leave. Just leave. And so she went to her sister's. When we came home and we had unlocked the door, Tom's elk head that he had hanging up on the wall that his brother, who's a taxidermist, hung up on a double lock for us. But as soon as we opened up that door, that elk head was about 1.5 feet away. He had a desk right underneath. He had his, real talk desk underneath the elk head and a lamp, but it was out about 1.5 feet. So the elk head was literally picked up off the wall and placed, and it's a 12-point antler. Nothing was wrong with the elk head. Not one antler broke. And as soon as we opened it up, we were like, the
right.
It was staring. It was positioned to look at us as soon as we opened the door.
So when did you start reaching out for help then?
Oh, I was reaching out for help continuously. The more doors I saw slam, the more kitchen doors I saw slam. We started hearing gunshots in the house going off constantly. We were getting foul smells of fecal, of urine, witches' laughter. We were getting deep growls all the time. And Amber just said, Mom, when we came back from Kentucky, she was just like, I love you, Mom. And she was crying. She says, but I can't live here, and you have to get out. Mom, you have to get out. So that was a really emotional impact on me when my daughter had to move out. And that's when I was just constantly beating Tom down, just trying to beat him down like, move us, please, we have to move. And it just continued, David. I just would say, okay, well, then if we can't move, I'm having another group in. I'm having another medium in. I'm having another warlock in. I'm having a priest in. I'm having a Reiki healer in. Tom, I wouldn't stop.
And he was fine with that?
Oh, he was so not fine with that. We were arguing about that.
Joni, now, do you think there's any chance that by her bringing all these different organizations and groups and practitioners in, that it was actually facilitating the haunting to get worse?
Oh, so it definitely was making things worse, yes.
Okay.
A lot of the investigators, and I have interviewed some of them for the book, and some of them really truly tried to do their part to help her with the cleanse the house, but it was far greater than what most people could handle. And what it just did is it provoked them. It made them angry. So things might have been calm for a couple of days after they left, but then all hell would break loose after that. It was like they would retaliate against her. So, but, she needed to know answers. She wasn't involved in the paranormal world before that, so she didn't know what was going on. And for her, it was a little bit of an obsession, almost like what she felt when she wanted to buy that house. She needed to know what was going on. And I think she thought that maybe by knowing she would be able to stop the haunting or solve the haunting. And it didn't. It just made things worse.
Now, talk to me, if you would, DeAnna, about John Zaffis. And getting him involved in this case. What was that like, and how did you get him in?
Somebody had recommended, that was a friend of John's, and said, hey, you got to come over to this house. Johnny, the next time that you're in the area, please, I'm asking you to come into this house. You have got to meet this couple, and you've got to come over and meet this house. Because I was telling these people that every time I brought somebody over, that I said it was like feeding off of them. It was getting stronger and stronger, and it was getting more louder, more things were happening. And, the last incident was when I was going up the steps and pushed me down the steps, and I had a hairline fracture on my tailbone. And then when John came out, finally my friend brought John out, and when John came out, he just came in the house and he just got real quiet. He took a deep breath, and mind you, like Joni said, I didn't know about the paranormal, and when he just came in, he took a deep breath. He was real quiet, and he just walked around the house, and he said, tell me what's happening to you. He already knew. It's like as if he knew. And he says, tell me what's happening to Tom. What's happened to an animal here? What's been going on? And he said he would be out for an investigation. And that's what he's done. He's been out a few times for an investigation.
What type of activity did he have show up while he was there?
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so when he came out, what do you call it? An ovulus.
Right.
He had an ovulus with him, spirit box.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, it just came right through. It started laughing. At one point, it sounded like a storm of voices, as if it was like, like a pregnancy, like amniotic fluid. Do you know, like when you hear a pregnant woman's ultrasound, it's like,
Right.
You could hear all of these voices, like, help me, and then it started talking in different languages. And then there was languages that we weren't sure what they were, and they were just saying one name, and they were like, he's here, shh, gotta go, can't talk, Diablo's here, Satan's here, Lucifer, and it started talking in Pennsylvania Dutch, started talking in other nationalities, and John was like, just putting his hand over his face and going, oh my God. And it started to challenge John. It started to talk about his uncle. And it just went on like
his uncle, of course, being Ed Warren, the famous demonologist and paranormal investigator. So it was the spirits there were taunting even the investigators.
Yes. And when John told it something, it would laugh and say, no, go to hell, F you. Yeah.
And his thoughts were, you need to get out of this house. But was anybody trying to shut this thing down, get this spirit out of your house once and for all?
Without saying too much, because it's in the book, it was best that I moved. John told me to get out. That he said it was ancient, and that's all I can say at this point. But he just looked at me, and the recording just went off the wall. It started, because John kept saying, tell me your name. I command you. So then it started. And I just know that John looked at me, and he said, and he grabbed my shoulders, and he was like, Dee, you have got to get out of this house. It was very intense.
Is that what you eventually had to do? Did you have to leave that house?
Yes.
And I know listeners are going to be curious then, did you end up having to sell the house?
We had it on the market for 8 months, and we had no nibbles, and I understand. Due to the history of the home, without people knowing the end result, nobody wanted the house. So it sat for 8 months. Chip Coffee told me to bulldoze down the house,
Right.
fill the basement up with concrete, and put a privacy fence around it, never to be built on again. Well, we had to recoup our money, so we couldn't do that.
So do you tell the people the experiences you've had there? Did you have to give a warning of some sort?
Yes. And we did not sign, we did end up renting the house, but we didn't sign a year's lease contract. We just said you can do month per month. Hey, no hard feelings.
And how long would people last?
Well, let's find out. It's lasted now for a month, and they've already been calling and saying, have you ever experienced this? Did you ever have this happen to you? And then I'm like, okay, here we go. It's the beginning, the start of the beginning. But now let's just say this. They are not getting anything that I would have considered malevolent, because that did not happen initially. But the house has been taken care of, and so far they're just getting things that you could live with.
I can probably jump in here.
Yeah, please, Joni.
Explain a little bit. The majority of the really awful parts of the haunting were being done by one particular entity. He was the one that was doing the damage. He was the one that was threatening and hurting people, and he was removed. So once he was gone, the house is not as bad as it was before. But with that said, there is still a portal there, and it has supposedly been shut down, but I've been back to the house after this cleansing, and it is still haunted. It wasn't the same extent that it was before. Like, I could stay there and not have any problems, but there's still something going on there, but it's not what it was before.
Understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying stuff. I mean, that's so much activities. Did any of it follow you from that property to where you live now?
One protector, it's a woman. Her name's Christiana. She did follow me to this house because she was my protector. And in that house, before the dark energy, she always warned me. She always warned me before something really bad was about to happen.
And you believe that this protective spirit has come with you?
Yes, I know she has.
Okay. Yeah. But nothing...
Tell them how you know she has.
Right, yeah. But I just want to clarify, there was nothing dark or strange or mysterious.
No, nothing here. This house is love and light.
Right.
We've had no problems, no nothing. I mean, we live in a house now, David. We have a home. We have a home. We have picnics. We have barbecues. We have a pool. I have my 8 grandbabies here. It is just, it's the way life is meant to be. But she is still with me.
And do you believe that it's because she's with you that's why you're safe?
I think that I'm safe because she's with me, but I don't think she has to protect anymore. There is a story about her that needs to be told. And Joni and I are here. She had the most important part to play in that haunting that happened to her, that by the dark energy that was attacking the family. And she's with me because this is a story that needs to be told. It's the only way she's going to be free and be able to be freed.
Joni, can you give us a little bit of that information of what it was like for you?
Yeah, the whole Christiana story really weaves through the book because, without giving a whole lot away, Christiana was also abused. And DeAnna, when she was married her second time, would often go out and try to stay away from the house when she knew her husband was going to be there. And one place she ended up going a lot was an old cemetery, and she would just go and sit in the cemetery and cry and pray. And at that point, we believe she picked up Christiana, because Christiana really resonated with her because they had similar lives, and Christiana was actually murdered. And she followed DeAnna back to her home and then to the new home as well. But with her came the man that murdered her. And so Christiana's story, she was also being haunted in the afterlife, as well as DeAnna was being haunted in real life. And so it was very interwoven. I think Christiana really saw DeAnna as somebody who was going through something similar, just on a different level, and really took to protecting her. So, it's like I really don't want to get into too much of it, but it really a lot of layers to this haunting that you wouldn't get from a lot of other stories.
DeAnna, what advice do you have for listeners, and we've got them around the world, that may be dealing with a haunting like yours?
The biggest advice that I can give to everybody that is going through similar situations with me is be careful. Don't panic. Don't flee. Don't just start taking in everything and feeding it, making it worse. Don't acknowledge it. Don't play into it. That's what it wants. Don't start recording. Don't start talking to them. Don't start doing EVPs and being like, hey, do you have something to tell me? I mean, I engaged. I acknowledged them. I fueled them. I brought people in for them to feed off of. I fed this thing. You have to be very careful with what you're doing, and only do it with professionals.
Do you believe that this house will always be haunted? Is that a temporal scar?
Yes. Not to the magnitude it was with me, like Joni just said. There is a portal that has been tried to have been closed numerous times. Each time, I swear, it grew and grew. So do I believe? Yes, it will always be haunted. To the extent it was, no. That evil, dark, malevolent, no, has been removed. But are there other sources there? Yes, because if you walked in that door right now and started taking out your equipment, it's going to engage right away. There's other things there that'll be like, hey, boom, boom. It's like a freak show for paranormal. It immediately engages. You don't have to wait, sit around for hours. It starts.
What happened when the Dead Files came there?
Oh my gosh. They were, first of all, Amy Allen and Steve DeShavi and the whole crew, Jim Casey, absolutely fantastic. Quality, painless production, amazing, just amazing. And they got all sorts of evidence that, that they're not allowed to talk about. But immediately when they walked in there, Amy had to bring in 2 shamans in order to walk in the door.
Has the episode aired yet?
The Dead Files aired in 2014. We are called
Okay.
The Assaulted. Mm-hmm. And then we did My Haunted House with Jim Casey, and that was called The Hanover Haunting.
And that's how deep the story. Where of course I work with Jim and Painless Productions with the TV show The Holzer Files.
I know.
Right?
Congratulations.
Thank you,
David. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're my #1 show.
Oh, we appreciate hearing that. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I do respect them for the work that they put in on it.
They're quality.
Did Amy leave feeling that things would get better?
Amy left it at this. She told us we had to get a warlock, which we did. And she said if this warlock could not, for 3 days and 3 nights, and he was told specifically what to do. And if that did not take care of it, she said, I'm afraid that it will never become resolved. And that is what has happened.
Gotcha. Yep. What a shame. I mean, it's sad to think that such a place is so tortured with that type of activity. And that, maybe those spirits will just really never know peace.
I agree with you. I don't think they'll ever know it because the 2 prior owners, I found out, were both the same type natured person, meaning both alcoholics, both abusive, both struck with the hand, incest. It just goes on and on. I mean, once the dead files came out, I received 50 emails. People were leaving notes all over the front porch. People were leaving angel gifts. People were constantly coming up and ringing the doorbell and saying, my grandma said, and I remember my mom talking, but my grandma said, and it just, everybody just positive, reinforced the fact that house, like they were told when they were little, they weren't allowed to go by that house because, that was the creepy house.
That's unbelievable. What a fascinating story. The book, it will be out and available February 20th. And will it be available through all major booksellers, Joni?
Yes, it will be. It'll be primarily on Amazon.com, but people will be able to find it in bookstores. All they have to do is ask for it if it's not on the shelf.
And we will have a link up for it as soon as it's available in our shop, folks. You can go directly to darknessradio.com, click on the store button, and that'll take you into a page. You can click on the Amazon storefront, and there you can access our paranormal books that we cover on the show, true crime books. You can also find a cool gift shop area there with all kinds of weird paranormal paraphernalia and such. So go check that out at darknessradio.com. You're out. Your life is turned around. Are you still with your husband that you were with at that house?
Yes. It got to the point, though, when we were at that house and after John left, and I just, and after I was thrown down the steps, had a hairline fracture on my tailbone by this darkness that shoved me down. I looked at my husband, I bawled, and I just said, I love you. I never want a divorce. If you want to stay in this house, you can stay here. But I'm getting an apartment. So, yes, thank God, and I do mean that literally, that Tom and I survived being victims to this haunting. And then once we left, we're yes, our life, our marriage, we are just fine. We are
That's
wonderful.
Great.
Yes.
That is great news. I can't thank you both enough for your time and sharing this terrifying haunting with us. We will check that audio, although there were a few spots I think we might have just been getting some of the bounce back audio. The time you were speaking, I distinctly heard a woman laugh at the start of this interview. Folks, write to me. Let me know. Did you hear it? Dave@darknessradio.com. Dave@darknessradio.com. And tell me, what do you think about hauntings like this? Have you lived through a haunting like this? Remember, we always want to hear your stories, and there's 2 ways to share them with me. You can email me, Dave@darknessradio.com, or call our Voices from Beyond voicemail, 651-300-4977, 651-300-4977, and leave us your story. If you have encountered the strange and the supernatural, we want to hear about it. And we'll share it on an upcoming episode of the Best in Paranormal Talk Radio. And also wanted to thank all of you that have been sending in notes and cards to P.O. Box 22321, Eagan, Minnesota, 55122. That is the P.O. Box. It's best to reach Darkness Radio. Just write it to Darkness Radio and then address it to either Tim or to Dave, and I'll make sure Tim gets them. I'll read through, and I'm reading every one of the notes we've gotten. We've had some great responses, some great letters, very sweet, kind things that have been said and sent, so we do appreciate that as well. That's Darkness Radio, P.O. Box 22321, Eagan, Eagan, Minnesota, 55122. Now remember, changes are coming. Exciting changes are coming. And you're going to be able to find this show soon on a whole plethora of new streams and ways to access it. For those of you using and utilizing our current platform, our app, keep it, because we will be updating and upgrading the app with the RSS feed so that you can continue to listen to the show from that app. You'll always have that available. If you haven't already downloaded it, go to the iTunes Store or to your Google Play Store, and you'll find the Darkness Radio app there. Download it. It's free to download. It'll give you access to my shows and make it easy for you to hear the programming that way. So keep watching, and please do us a favor on today's program. Do us a favor, like it here, and keep you up to date with other cool content. For Tim Dennis, I'm Dave Schrader. You've been listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio.